Hello and welcome to another episode of Nutanix Weekly, one of the many podcasts that here at XenTegra, we like to call it content with context, and that's because we go on the internet and find the best content, and we try to bring our real world experiences to it. So this week on Nutanix Weekly, we're going to be talking about uh, a topic for future-proofing your business, and I think that's a timely topic that applies to every business. And as with every podcast, I'm joined with a few different panelists, and happy to have friends on the podcast with me. I'm Phil Sellers. I'm the practice director for Modern Data Center here at XenTegra, and I'm joined with Jirah Cox, an architect for Nutanix, longtime guest of this podcast, kind of our guiding light, maybe. He's the man, the myth, the legend. Jirah, how are you, man?
Good, Phil. Thanks for having me. I like to think that I've future-proof this podcast.
Hey, yeah, there we go. Right on brand, right on target. I'm also joined with solutions architect Andy Greene here at XenTegra. Andy is former Nutanix sales engineer and joined us about 10 months ago.
11 at this point.
All right. We're working on that year, and we'll be celebrating that soon on an upcoming episode. Andy, you've been in the field with us for a while now and helping our customers. Do you get to talk about future proofing with customers and their strategies?
I do. Yes, that's a big part of what we do here at XenTegra, right? We always want to understand the strategy for the client, where they are today, where they want to go, and from there we can start to think about how we can help them get there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, we definitely want that partnership to be able to talk strategy with our customers. And so I'm happy when we find customers that find value in the way that we go to market. It is a little different, but something that we're passionate about. We want to get to know our customers deeply and help them succeed. And I'm also joined with Chris Calhoun. Chris is also a solutions architect here at XenTegra. Just celebrated over a year with us, and it feels like you've been here since the furniture moved in. So I like that.
I thought that's what I was supposed to do as the furniture mover.
And miscellaneous other assignments, right?
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. So as always, I have to ask, Chris, how's your day going?
It really is fantastic for today. I can truly say that. So fantastic.
I love Chris on the team because that kind of enthusiasm is what he brings every single day. And guys, I'm always happy to get together and talk tech. So when we're thinking about future proofing, there's a lot of change going on in the industry right now. Just rapid fire, what do you think of in terms of strategies or technology related to future proofing?
For me, I definitely think of the idea of agility, not getting locked into a solution. Obviously with the change over the past year or so from guys thinking, hey, look, we might be VMware customers for the rest of our lives to now we're looking for an exit strategy, So I think that with that in mind, that the blog post that we had in the past was around, hey, change adverse versus change acceptance and understanding that migrating workloads and it's not all a bad thing. And I think that change for the better is good. And this is a definite topic of discussion that helps us future proof in that knowing where customers, as Andy said, hey, let's understand where you are today and what does the next 5 to 10 years look like, or maybe even next year look like, so that we can help customers navigate that path forward that's uncertain in many customers' minds of what the future will hold. So I think that this direction and Nutanix as a whole helps lend itself to that. You didn't ask all of that. Maybe you did, but that was, I think I'm done.
Andy, Jirah, what do you think of?
Uh, I'm going to go with portability and scalability, right? If we're architected in a way that lets us run the workload wherever it makes sense, and if we can scale up and down dynamically, I think we've gone a long way towards making sure that we have a solution that's flexible and can meet those needs as the business continues to grow and evolve.
Portability came into my mind as well. As much as we hear these days about hey, it's whatever it was plus AI, like network management plus AI, threat defense plus AI. Changing out hardware platforms, changing out software platforms. My mind goes to what do I hear the most about from customers? It's migrations, right? Like we are in X and we are moving to Y, right? It is maybe one of the hardest things to future proof because given a long enough timeline, you're gonna want to move something probably in your environment from somewhere to somewhere else.
I think that's fair. I was going to call foul if somebody didn't say AI because it's just permeating. That's the right word. Permeating everything that we talk about in IT here lately. So, thank you for bringing that up.
That's
Uh,
the value I bring.
that there you go. Yeah, on top of it. Um, Yeah, the blog post we've got today is freedom to innovate. So as we talk about future proofing, I agree with you, Jirah. A lot of it's migrating. Some of the migration, though, is also in retooling and refactoring applications, maybe recoding them, moving them to a newer or cloud native platform. And so this blog post is really around how a complete and open Kubernetes platform can future proof your business. It was written by Dan Cerulli, Senior Director of Product Management for Cloud Native at Nutanix. And Jirah, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Dan come in as part of the acquisition of D2IQ?
He did. He did. Glad to have him.
Yeah, absolutely. What's great about Nutanix and where you're at today is you're in a thought leadership position, helping lead and craft the future direction of the Cloud Native Foundation, CNCF. And you're a major contributor now through the acquisition of D2IQ and Nutanix Kubernetes platform. Um, for our listeners, and I've heard this a few times, we joked about it before we started recording, but tell us what Kubernetes is for someone who's not familiar.
I Ira's definition of Kubernetes is obviously fundamentally it's a container, right? Which we've all heard so much about for containers for applications. Um, it's a way as a container, right, to ship both the application you want to run as well as everything it needs, right? So if you need certain kinds of Perl scripts or Python libraries or other bits that you've written that power your app, you can ship all of that together in one thing. My gyraism for that is it's the most fashionable way to install applications, right? So in some ways we've sort of been shipping everything that our apps need for the longest time, right? Either back when the world was young and dinosaurs ruled the earth, there were mainframes, right? We wrote the code right there with everything else that they needed. In the 90s, right, we had the rise of the MSI and the exe installer and next finish. There was, a period of time where it was clone the Git repo and then customize some variables and run it in your instance, and then occasionally resync back to source. And nowadays it's Docker pull, certain container, and that's everything you need. So the everything you need is not necessarily a new motion for IT. The monolithic packaging of it's just one thing, right? That I can push to one place, pull everywhere, and have the infrastructure to run it. That's sort of the promised land, right? The outcome that we want to get to. Credit to a coworker of mine who taught me the joke of, Kubernetes is the world's answer to when the developer says, well, it works on my laptop, then operations says, okay, we're shipping your laptop.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's about that consistency of it working the same every time. That's what containers are really about, is that consistency so that you're not changing the container. It is immutable and it is the same no matter where it gets invoked, no matter where it gets run. And Kubernetes is that framework of all the other things outside of that. I've been thinking about this topic and how to convey it for a series of lunch and learns that we're working on. And it kind of dawned on me that Kubernetes is sort of like the scaffolding that gets the container all of the other things it needs. So it's kind of like, building a building out of containers, and it's the scaffolding kind of around it because Kubernetes itself is just orchestration, but there are plugins to it. And I love the slide that Nutanix has. It's kind of like a sunburst, and there's 12 different areas, different plugins that you need to make choices around so that you can observe what's going on, so that you can encrypt or inspect what's going on in the network traffic, so that you can talk to storage, so that you can talk to a network, so that you can load balance. And so Kubernetes is a modular framework that surrounds the container and orchestrates it. I love the succinct way that you say it, though, Jirah. It's the fashionable way to deploy applications. That sums it up in a great way, I think, for infrastructure folks listening. This is that deadly part of the IT world that lives between infrastructure and developers. And developers really want to code. That's what they're passionate about. That's what they want to do. They don't want to think about load balancing and instances and metrics and all of this other crazy stuff that Kubernetes allows us in the infrastructure practice to wrap around their code. And that's part of the challenge and the opportunity for us in the infrastructure space. So, Jirah, I'm going to throw back to you one more time. Let's talk a little bit now specifically about NKP as a release and a product from Nutanix. We're talking about a framework, a opinionated stack. What does that mean?
I think an opinionated stack means that if you don't have an opinion, you get to use ours by default, right? Mm-hmm. So there's not that requirement that a lot of people perceive or even have tried before in the past around, hey, I want Kubernetes, or I need to vend Kubernetes to my application teams in my infrastructure. Therefore, I have to go become an expert first, right? Once I'm an expert, then we'll be off to the races, right? Now we can start deploying. That opinionated means, guess what? We have an opinion for what Kubernetes can look like in production. We get to this other part here. The open part means that if you have a different opinion than ours, we can change ours, right? We can change it and customize the deployment and use your preferences instead. This is a great middle of the road approach because obviously there's a lot of other ways you can run containers, right? You can, of course, take on that whole science project of I want to do all the integration, all the testing, have a choice from if you look at CNCF, right, the whole cloud native foundation, there's 1,200 different options, right, that you can pick from across the entire suite of integrations where, like you said, Phil, between 12 and 24, 30 or so core decisions you make for a given deployment stack. This is why Kubernetes in the cloud took off so well, right? I can just run the containers vended by, or the Kubernetes infrastructure vended by my cloud provider, right? By Amazon, by Azure, by Google. And by doing so, that's all decided for me. Right now, the downside is I get very deeply embedded into their infrastructure and I can't make a change as easily as I wanted to maybe down the road, right? Or how would I federate, that on-prem with my cloud infrastructure as well? Gets a little challenging, gets a little bit more interesting maybe than we want our infrastructure to be. So, I can always use the cloud. I can always use vendor proprietary stuff. I can always go full open source, right? But the one thing we like about our strategy at Nutanix is the fact that it's kind of middle of the road there, right? It's all the openness, all the completeness. It is as turnkey as you want it to be, but it's customizable as you also often need it to be, right? Sometimes I use an analogy of a kit car that comes assembled, right? You have full permission to tear everything down, change out a component, but also you can just put the keys in and drive.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what you're also saying is that the cloud providers have their own opinionated stack, they have their answers to all of these questions. And sometimes when you get locked into that, that's the only way you're going to be able to do
Yeah, we're probably not unique in the possessing an opinion phase. Yeah.
it. But that's good though. So it's an easy button also. Having an opinionated stack means you don't have to be experts in those 12 different disciplines. You can take the easy route, and that's got value for customers too.
Yep. And some things like in that 12 categories and stuff like ingress, mesh, discoverability, cost governance, observability, disaster recovery, replication and backups, all these different areas where kind of just like any other application infrastructure, I need answers for how am I going to do these things in a containerized world. The same way I do them in the physical world, in the virtualized world, often in the functions world for serverless, even sometimes down to like my workstations, right? I need to have some kind of observability for them. So nothing unique necessarily in the containerized space, but something that I do have to have an answer for that might not be my previous tooling that I was used to before.
100%. So as we go through the blog here, Andy, I'm going to throw to you next. When Kubernetes emerged for IT development deployments, there were primarily three options that they cover here in the blog post. What are those three options?
Sure. Yeah. First was a proprietary enterprise grade solution that included everything. But it was really a monolithic black box that locked you in with a single vendor. Second, I think we saw, build your own Kubernetes was always an option, right? You can go out and select your own tools for monitoring, for networking, et cetera, for application delivery. And then, with that, you've got to manage all of the updates, you've got to manage security, networking, et cetera. And then finally, we had the public cloud services. And, each of these kind of had its own benefits, advantages, disadvantages. But, the first one that we talked about really wasn't customizable. The second option that we talked about there, it made it impossible for organizations that didn't have the strong Kubernetes skills to deploy their own and make it work and make it secure the way that they wanted it to be. And then finally, I think using the cloud provider locked you into using cloud provider add-ons as well. So just there's a lot of flexibility in having another approach that we can use.
Yeah. So from a Nutanix perspective, this language carries over from D2IQ to NKP. Its build is complete and open. And so I think we understand the complete piece of things, but to double down on it, it means it's production ready. It's an enterprise ready Kubernetes platform that answers all those questions. So that part makes sense. What about open, Chris? What does the open piece of complete and open mean?
I think it doesn't pigeonhole you holds you into specific decisions on technology in the sense that, and this goes back to Jirah's comments about, hey, if it worked on your laptop as a developer, that's the only frame of reference for the environment. This allows you to have freedom of choice for that network, having a vanilla type setup so that your environments are open and aren't exclusive to the decisions you make on infrastructure impact the ability to run a specific containerized application. It gives you the choices so that you do have flexibility, like you mentioned in the sunburst of from a security stance. If you as a business or a customer are already have specific vendors that you're working with, it gives that freedom and balance of choices, but also guided experiences too. So I think that that's really the best way to kind of summarize that.
Yeah, and I think that's true to the spirit of what Kubernetes is. It was created to be an open framework where you could plug things in modularly. And so really NKP is that coming to fruition, right? It's got an opinion you can use by default, but it doesn't force that opinion upon you. You can swap out today or tomorrow or 5 years ahead when you have more experience and you decide that the default's not the right fit. The other thing I think that's hugely important, and this goes into a little bit of minutia, is the way that things are controlled and the way that things are created are using open APIs. So there's nothing proprietary here. And then that's an important thing because risk comes with that proprietary thing. In its infancy, there's a lot of Kubernetes companies and platforms that came out that had proprietary answers to fill in some of the gaps in the earlier versions. Let's talk a little bit about the risk of closed or less open Kubernetes platforms. Jirah, can you kind of walk us through this and some of the risk factors that come with, um, I guess, a proprietary Kubernetes platform?
Sure. Yeah. The article outlines four of them here. I think they're pretty spot on, right? The big one first is being lock-in, right? So um, if I'm building any kind of product on top of open source, right, then it kind of behooves me to kind of add my own special sauce to it, right, and add my value there. So when I do that, then that becomes something that only my platform has versus what is the goodness of like the upstream open source software itself. So that is then something that probably only people get from me versus being part of the ecosystem, right? But another side of that coin is that now if I'm adding my code to this, then when the upstream platform, in this case like Kubernetes, ships, I have to take that release and then now put that in the lab, right? And check all of my code against it for compatibility. That can often lead to limited innovation, right? Or even a slowness of releases, right? Because then it gets harder and harder to follow the actual upstream Kubernetes release there, right? Which of course we're very happy to say we follow upstream releases with NKP. There's with that lock-in, right? Of course, comes portability challenges, right? Because if you're using my thing, then by default, if you can't get that somewhere else, then you probably don't have as many options with moving that around when you want to. And all this can tend towards some possible silos, right? Because Kubernetes itself is built for openness and being able to run basically anywhere from like quite literally your watch, your phone, your laptop, a server, a fleet of servers, bare metal at the edge, I don't know, airplanes, dashboards of cars, anywhere you want to.
Fast
If
food
my
restaurant
thing,
down the street.
pardon, what'd you say, Phil?
Fast food restaurant down the street.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Right. Anywhere. But if my platform, if I don't certify it to run all those places, well, then you have a subset of places now where you can run my product on top of Kubernetes, right, as more of a proprietary or closed ecosystem, right? So some of the common challenges that we see kind of across the industry.
Yeah. And portability is really one of the main goals. And honestly, I think back, we've been chasing portability for applications for decades. I remember when Java first released and the Graybeard indicator, right? It was supposed to be write once, run anywhere.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Java didn't quite pan out that good. And, there's lots of different reasons and factors, but Kubernetes, again, is trying to let that write once, run anywhere sort of concept come to real life. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits for end users. So let's walk through these. Chris, what is a couple of the benefits for end users?
I think really what we talked about is that the open source framework of the CNCF, having choices within that are cutting edge technologies that are, I'll say, pre-blessed in the sense that gives you completeness in the open stack is really something that without having to wait on specific vendor solutions, gives you that freedom of choice early. And I think that's really the development to future proof. If you make a decision now that may be wrong, or if you go with a vendor that doesn't see the bigger picture of 1 to 2 to 3 years down the road, then you don't have that freedom, and you are waiting on that vendor for lagging behind to come up with the next iteration. So I think that's key. And then, as Andy mentioned earlier, is application mobility is really a key. Having open APIs and standard interfaces to communicate with your apps going forward is really the way forward. I think that, of course, AI is the trending term, but I think APIs and integration is really one of the key factors to our agility in being able to help customers with solutions where in the past it may be that they were point solutions that didn't integrate. Now, most companies are pushing for these APIs to interact with their products so that you can have that mobility. And that's just the first two on the list, but there are a few more. Obviously, I'll throw it to whoever's next in the hit list to go through.
Yeah, Andy, why don't
some
you
of the
take
benefits.
those? Let's talk through some more of the benefits that are there.
Sure thing. Yeah, unified hybrid multi-cloud operations. Using open platforms with APIs, like Chris said, allows you to run Kubernetes across all of your environments. Second to that, I would say customization. A modular, open platform lets you mix and match open source and commercial solutions to really customize it to your business needs. So you're not just tied into a single vendor software stack. And then finally, lower costs and smaller teams. With unified Kubernetes operations across all of your environments, you need less specialized teams, and so therefore things are just more efficient, and costs should go down with that.
Yeah. For someone who's not watched or not super familiar with Kubernetes, something like the open APIs and cluster API may be something that you just glance over, but being able to talk to and manage all of your clusters and fleets of Kubernetes clusters around the world in a unified way, that is huge. Cluster API is one of the leveling factors for us. Yes, you could have Kubernetes everywhere, but if you're not all using Cluster API, then that means you're going to have different pieces of tooling, different command lines, different configurations, configuration drift. And so that all equals risk. And you can eliminate that by having a common way of managing all of your clusters everywhere. Cluster API is a huge leveling factor. So I think of Kubernetes as sort of like dial tone, right? Everything else gets built on top of that. So it's one of the huge things for us, I think, in terms of being able to assure that you can really run anywhere. And that piece was always the tough thing. Yes, Java let us write once. The run anywhere was somewhat limited, and this is really focused on solving the run anywhere problems. Is that a fair statement, you think, Jirah?
It is. I mean, it gives you so many more options, right? Whether for customizability, right? Like out of the gate, Kubernetes lets you say, I need a small cluster. I can grow it to a large cluster. I can scale it in response to the need. I mean, there probably is a way that Java could have done that, right? If I got enough Blu-ray players together in one place and, got my soldering iron out, I could probably do that, right? And then have that, Java Frankenstein monster available to me. But this is just ready to go, right now. The article even talks about how there's even benefits here for people that ship the software, right? The software vendors themselves, because Kubernetes becomes that lowest common denominator that everyone will agree to, right? And code against, as in, this is what the infra team provides, this is what the application team expects, kind of that great little decoder ring meet in the middle, right? For what are the benefits that come along with that, right? That ship software faster, let the ecosystem grow, and fundamentally, right, support that openness model.
Yeah, 100%. And it's certainly around speed. And that's the other thing that you hit on, Chris, at the very first point, access to CNCF innovation. Well, how does it being open and complete, how does that tap into CNCF innovation versus something that's proprietary?
It means that obviously the open source innovation is going to make its way into the Nutanix Kubernetes platform even faster. And I
Yeah.
think that with that, it doesn't slow you down as a business, and it allows you to continue to make those decisions going forward.
Yeah, I mean, something as simple as, you know, what what goes into the QA cycles when you've got extra software or software that's not in the open source project, you're just going to delay getting that innovation out. So it cuts down on the overall lag. That makes sense.
Streamline. Mm-hmm.
Streamlines, yeah. Well, and so that takes us right into the benefits for independent software vendors. Open Kubernetes approach is also vital for the software vendors. And we've got three benefits here. So, Chris, do you want to go quickly through those three benefits?
Absolutely. It's exactly what we just mentioned. Faster route to market. Developing open source components, APIs, ISVs obviously gets you a quicker launch cycle with less validation, more streamlining. The ecosystem growth itself. Um, as you start small and continue to grow, if you've built that framework, you're in a more extensible scaffolding that you mentioned earlier, relating back that if the structure's solid, you move on quicker and more efficiently. And then the open source core model, obviously, to me, that goes back to a common language. And that's really, to me, setting the expectations for communication just as a whole between APIs and open source projects just in general. To me, knowing that you're going to have enhanced load balancers, security tools, and observability solutions already in place can help you grow that environment quicker. So I think that that really hits on those three bullet point benefits. Jirah, Andy, anything else to add to that?
Yep, well said. I think flexibility yields speed. Speed yields value. With value comes investment. Investment breeds open source, and open source increases flexibility. So it's a great virtuous circle.
Yeah. And, when we talk about this, this is also, from the beginning talking about future proofing. Modularity is another huge part of future proofing. So that's the next section of the blog, talking about the power of modularity. Andy, as you think about modularity and how it helps you from a future proofing standpoint, what kind of sticks out there to you? Like what about Kubernetes helps future proof you?
A modular system means that all of your key components, networking, ingress controllers, monitoring, security, uh, all of these can easily be customized or even swapped out for something completely different. So, for example, if you start with a very popular open source load balancer, but then maybe at a later date you decide that you want to replace it with another either open or commercial solution, you've got that ability to go in, rip out the one component that you want to replace it with the one that you want to move to, without breaking the entire system. So, it really enables you to tailor those Kubernetes environments, those deployments to your unique needs without hindering your ability to change and to adapt over time.
So what you're saying is Kubernetes is kind of like your answer to a 90s sitcom. And just bear with me here for a minute. So it means that if a joke doesn't age well, you can just swap it out for another joke.
Pretty much, yes.
Jirah's giggling. I'm enjoying seeing
waiting
him
for
on
it.
the other end.
That's
I know.
a timely
Everyone's
example.
like, where are you going with this? Crazy man. But that's it. I mean, future proofing is all about that. So today's best of breed, we want to be able to move to tomorrow's best of breed because nothing's standing still here in our ecosystem. Everything's constantly evolving. So we want to be able to adopt that as quickly as possible. And so what you're hearing is open Kubernetes, and an open Kubernetes distribution is the way to facilitate that. So um, as we kind of wrap up what's here in the blog, open's not just a technical decision, it's a strategic one. And so as we've talked about these different things and the uh, ability to leverage open, modular, very close to the open source community, all of that becomes speed and advantage to you and your organization. So I think that's a great way of kind of wrapping up what we're talking about. Um, you're delivering a Kubernetes platform that's open and complete. It's production grade ready. It's supported, but it's also modular and flexible. And all of that equals future proof. Any final thoughts, guys?
I think to Jirah's point, obviously the fashionable way to install workloads these days is not only fashionable, but it's streamlined. And I think
Yeah.
that that's really the power of the platform. And I think it just fits well with folks that want every bit of those illities that we talked about: agility, flexibility. How about that? Illities. Um, and I think it just makes sense for those businesses because Nutanix helps with that. You know, it gives you that framework platform. I even heard a customer speak today that mentioned, "Hey, look, we want a good, solid platform as we transition away from VMware, that we know that as we make decisions for our future, it's future proof." And that's what I heard today. And I think that this is the strategy going forward. So I think it makes sense.
I think it ties back to how we opened around, those eternal problems of IT, one of them being just the never-ending migrations, right? And so it presents a path for deployment that also makes those feature migrations, which we just know are an inevitability, that much easier and that much more streamlined.
Yeah, I think it's really just key to embracing the future, right? Embrace flexibility, embrace scalability. And then through that, we can unlock new opportunities and we can grow. And I think that's what future proofing is really all about.
Yeah. And, as we also said at the top of the episode, we were talking about AI, and almost exclusively AI runs in containers. It's not a universal truth, but overwhelmingly, when we talk about large language models and a lot of AI innovation, those applications are written in containers, which means sooner or later, if you're being talked about AI, you're also going to be talking about Kubernetes. And so we think it's an important topic. I do want to put this out at the end of the blog post. There is a section where you can click to watch an on demand webinar to learn 7 steps to simplify Kubernetes adoption. I highly recommend that you find the blog post. It's out on nutanix.com/blog. Title of it again is Future Proofing, Freedom to Innovate, how a complete and open Kubernetes platform can future proof your business. Again, that link is at the very bottom of the post. Guys, thanks for joining me and having an interesting discussion around this. I hope for everyone listening that maybe you walk away today and think a little bit more or know a little bit more about Kubernetes. Maybe it's a little more approachable to you. But we're always here also to help. So reach out if there's ever anything we can do. If you're being approached about AI, if you're being approached about Kubernetes, we're here to help, and definitely all want to help you. So please reach out, and thanks for listening today. I hope that you have a great day, and we will catch you on the next episode.